So by sovereign, he owns the land of Israel. When you read Leviticus 25, verse 2 and verse 23, if you realize that, yeah, if God is the owner of the land of Israel, then he has the right to give it to who he wants to give it to. It's like God owns a car, and then he decides to give it to you or to give it to somebody else. The same way, God owns the land of Israel, and it happened that he gave it to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their descendants. Ezekiel 36, verse 28. When you read it, you realize that a covenant was given. And that covenant was initialized in Genesis 12. That's where we spoke clearly about the beginning of the Israel, the beginning of the Jewish people. And the same covenant in Ezekiel 36, 28 was formalized in Genesis 15. And later on, that covenant was amplified in Genesis 17. Genesis 17, verse 7 to 8. And when you reach a little bit of Ezekiel 36, verse 16 to 22, we realize that except the prophet, okay, thank you. When you read a Genesis 17, verse 7 to 8, and Ezekiel 36, 16 to 22, you realize that God spoke about in the Old Testament, he kept on repeating the land's promises to all the descendants of Abraham. He kept on speaking about it to every prophet. And God is literally telling them, you know, guys, I know you have been really messing up. You have been really not faithful. You have really hardened your heart. But I keep on bringing you back anyway. He keep on bringing them back. And this is not just because of the children of Israel per se, but it's because of his namesake. God being a God that never lies, God being a God that is faithful, God being a God that is not a man that changes his mind or a son of man. He has given a promise, and that promise must be fulfilled. So all this protection, all this love, all this affection, all this bringing back the children of Israel to Israel is for his namesake. He has to prove that, yes, I've given a prophecy, I've given a promise, I've signed a covenant, I'm a covenant keeper, and it has to be fulfilled. And this is literally an expression of God's love and God's covenant. And that you will amplify it better in Genesis 17, verse 7 to 8. If you read later also Psalms 105, verse 6 to 11, and Psalms 106, verse 6, verse 19, verse 28, verse 32, and verse 44. You will understand better what the love of God is speaking about. Now, when you look at Ezekiel 36 and 37, basically, we spoke about the contract being formalized, initialized in Genesis 12, formalized in Genesis 15, and amplified in Genesis 17. When you look at Genesis 36 and 37, it speaks so much about the prediction. And then Ezekiel, who was a priest in Jerusalem, remember, was deported in Babylon. And he spoke and predicted by then about the nation restoration, despite the fact that those people were in captivity. By then, he spoke about it. And who could have believed? People could have thought, no, but these people are in captivity. How can a nation be restored despite all that? But later on, we realized that God promised to restore a fruitfulness to the land. In Ezekiel 36, verse 8 to 11, he spoke about fruitfulness and promised that that land shall be restored. And as we speak today, you can know that Israel is around 9.3 million people and 43% increase in terms of demography. So if you look at study done today, you realize that the promise given in Ezekiel 36, verse 8 to 11 is being fulfilled in front of our eyes. 70 years after the prediction, because if you look at when Ezekiel predicted the restoration to when actually the restoration started, children of Israel started going back, we had a gap of 70 years. And 570 years after that, we have seen in the history that the Romans came and destroyed the temple. And that has caused the dispersion of those children that has lasted for almost 2,000 years. So for the last 2,000 years, the Jewish are being spread all over the world, and they're returning slowly back home. And for the fact that it has lasted 2,000 years, people will start believing that, yeah, God has spoken, but 2,000 years down the line, these people are still spread all over the world. And that could make people believe and think that, yeah, whatever God spoke about may not be fulfilled. But when you start this clearly, the study, and you do exactly what you do, a research on what Israel is all about and how the demography is moving today and how the children of the Jewish children are getting born again daily and daily, we realize that, yeah, the prophecy is being fulfilled before our eyes, you know? And when you read clearly Ezekiel 36, especially the 20, from 20, verse 24 to 26, and Jeremiah 31, you realize that the restoration that God spoke about to the children of Israel is not just a physical, it's not just a restoration of the land, but it's also talk about the restoration, the spiritual restoration, meaning they will come back to the Lord, and the Lord will clean them and purify them to a new life. So when you read Jeremiah 31, you will understand better that this restoration doesn't only affect the physical, but also talks a little bit about the spiritual. And when we spoke about earlier in Romans 11 last Thursday about the clear future of Israel, and we found it in Romans 11, 25 to 26. And we said clearly that a day is coming when the children of Israel will turn back to the Lord and realize that, yeah, we have been away from God. And whatever we have gone through, if it's not the hand of the Lord, we could have not survived. So it will really open their eyes and they will realize that, yeah, the Lord has always been with us. And on that day, many of them will give their life to Christ. When you read the history a little bit about Israel, before the declaration was made and the country of Israel was recognized, you could think that that promises and that prophecy could never be happening. People could never believe that one day Israel could have been recognized as a nation. And that declaration was made on the 15th May 1948. And right after that declaration was made, which is the following day, 5 main nations, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, at the same time attacked Israel. But only God, only through the hand of God, they were able to win those 5 nations and come out victorious. In 1967, Israel went through 6 days of war. It was actually a civil war. And the army was outnumbered 50 to 1. 50 to 1. And that's actually, at the end of it all, they ended up leaving. They ended up winning. And that brings us back to what Ezekiel said in Ezekiel 37. Can this bone live? Actually, they are still living, and they are still stronger. And you can see that the prophecy given to Abraham was actually fulfilled. There is this address to the UN that the Prime Minister, Benjamin, had in 2015. And I want to read exactly what he said, word by word. He said, in every generation, there were those who rose up to destroy our people. In antiquity, we faced destruction from the ancient empire of Babylon and Rome. In the Middle Age, we faced inquisition and expulsion. And in modern time, we face pogrom and the Holocaust. Yet, the Jewish people preserved. And now, another regime have risen, swearing to destroy Israel. That regime will be wise to consider this. I stand here today representing Israel, a country 67 years young, but the nation state of a people nearly 4,000 years old. Yet the empire of Babylon and Rome are not represented in this hall of nation, neither is the 1,000-year, those seemingly invincible empire are long gone. But Israel lives. The people of Israel lives. So that tells you that despite all the tribulation, despite all the battle, despite all the attack, all the frustration they have gone through, Israel is still living, still getting strong, and still building up. When you look at actually the history since 1780 to 1967, you realize that a country that was really ruled by 40 different nations under Israel control is today, actually the Palestine was run by 40 different nations between 1780 to 1967. But today, what are we seeing? That land is under Israel control. And today, as we speak, Israel is part of a fulfillment of the prediction, because Ezekiel in 37 and 36 and 37 predicted that we will have a regeneration and a spiritual restoration back to God of the children of Israel before our eyes. Because if you look at now the how the Jewish people are getting back to God, you realize that the rate at which it's happening these days are very, very, very high compared to old days. And as we speak today, in 1943, only 23 Jewish people were called, confessed Jesus and were called Christian. But today there are more than 30,000 that believe in Jesus, the Messiah, you know? But now, it shows that, yes, the promises is still being fulfilled before our right eyes. And we need to see and be keen about what is happening there. So today we will not go too much into details. And in conclusion, I will say that the promises of God are very simple and straightforward. And there's no need to really break our head around it. He has promised something, he's faithful, he will fulfill it. And God says clearly, I made a deal, and my name is on that deal. And the deal is, he spoke to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the descendant. And he said it directly to them, I'm making a deal with you for an everlasting covenant on this land. And even if you are disobedient and rebellious and spoil it all, yes, I will spank you with captivity and displacement, but I'm not going to replace you. I'm going to bring you back, as simple as that. So, yeah, you will go through those displacement, you will go through those captivity. It's my way of pulling your ears a little bit, but still, I will bring you back. And that's actually what happened to us, even in our own families. I know most of us have children here, and some of our children, we desire the best for them. We have kind of covenant with them to make sure that they are raised according to God's laws, God's will, and to see them being established and fulfilled in life. But let me tell you, some of those children, they have also their own shortcomings. They have their own mistake that they do. What do? Do we cast them out? No. What we do, sometimes we spank them, we pull their ears, we pinch them here and there. But our love toward them is still there. And our covenant toward them, our assignment toward them remain the same. So yeah, they mess around, but still our love toward them as parents remains. And we remain committed to our assignment to make sure that they are raised according to God's will and they are fulfilled. And that's exactly what happened to the children of Israel. God has made a covenant with them. He has made the promises to them. And despite the hardening of heart, despite everything, he's still a God that keeps his covenant, who keeps his promises. So take home today, it will be majorly 3. When we look at the 3 sections, we will realize that God is actually faithful and he really keeps his promises. He made the promises to Abraham and he's not a liar because he's still fulfilling them. And today, sit down and think about the promises that God has given to you. I know he has given so many of them. Personal promises, some of the promises are in the Bible. And I remember the first session, prophet asked us to write down some of the promises that God has given to us in the Bible. Rest assured that he's not a liar and he will fulfill them. And the second take home is that, yes, we are not blameless. We are not righteous on our own, you know. But despite everything, God, our failures and our detour from his plan will not stop him from fulfilling what he promises to us. Israel has failed again and again and again, but still, the promises that he has given to them is still being fulfilled. The same way, every promises that God has given unto us will surely come to pass despite our many failures. You know? And the whole thing about Israel is quite a mystery. God spoke about blindness, which is a hardness of the heart, and that hardness is passion, intentional, and passing and purposeful. Because all that is happening basically because of us Gentiles. We are still waiting for the last Gentile to receive God as a savior, and then things will happen. The second part of the prophecy will be fulfilled. So that blindness is just purposeful and intentional and passion, you know. And until all the Gentiles that are called by the Lord come to the Lord, Israel will still remain in that blindness. So it's time for us to go out, evangelize, and speak to our people, speak to those of our close families that are still here to say yes to the Lord, so that we can see this completion in the promises and the fulfillment of all the promises and all the prediction that God has given. So on that note, I will refer us back to Romans 11:25-26, and that is where clearly we shall see the future of Israel. Thank you. Back to Lavender.
Thank you, Sahou. Thank you for that. I'll just hand it over to Prophet for now, and then she'll guide us on the next step. Prophet Janet?